Good evening. Welcome, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Some more people might join us in just a few minutes. Welcome to the Coppell Academy, Coppell FC, presentation for U7 to U10 parents for the 2020-2021 season. My name is Megan Morales, and I'm the Director of Competitive for Coppell FC. I also have Nadeem Shaboot joining us. He's our Director of Coaching, and we're going to hopefully answer all your questions about our Academy program. Just to go through a few housekeeping things, you will notice that you are on mute and you don't have the ability to unmute yourself. You can type any questions that you might have in the Q&A portion, and we will try to answer those questions in writing as the presentation goes along. And if time permits, we will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. So what is Coppell FC? What is our philosophy? We are trying to provide a positive environment for competitive soccer players at varying skill levels, starting at age 6 and up, to advance their development of each player and assist them to reach their full potential. So we focus on 4 different realms: technical, tactical, physical, and mental aspects of the game. And we attempt to instill a lifelong passion for the game of soccer. And we do all this in a reality-based training environment with experiential learning and a holistic training approach. So I think some of the parents that we have on today are current Academy players. There may be also some people who have only played rec soccer up till this point. So I just want to try to differentiate between the two programs to try to make that more clear. So rec soccer is for birth years 2002 to 2016 for the coming fall season. And rec soccer really is intended for all levels of ability. It's intermixed. The rosters are created from a blind draft. You cannot pick your own team. And it can be anything from beginner and intermediate players who have some level of understanding, no previous experience, and you get a mix of different aptitude and passion for the game. That, in addition, you can commit seasonally, so you could play soccer in the fall and then decide that you don't want to play soccer in the spring, and that's okay. Academy soccer is the next level. Okay, so Academy soccer is intended for players looking for advanced development and competition, players who are already showing increased aptitude, who have a good understanding, a base understanding, and have a passion for the game. So these are your kids that want to go out and practice even on their own when someone's not watching. And Academy, unlike rec soccer, it is a minimum of a 6-month commitment from the player and the parent. And that's because our season runs from July through December. So we would have a fall league season as well as winter training and a winter indoor league. And then we pick up a spring season and do summer practices as well. So it would run from July to December and then another 6 months from January to June. So rec soccer and Academy soccer go hand in hand. You can play both at the same time. It's permitted by North Texas Soccer. And in fact, obviously, we encourage our players to play both. So as many of you know, the CYSA rec games are on Saturdays. And because of that, we sign up for Academy leagues that play on Sundays to ensure that there's no conflicts and players can play both. So at U7 and U8, it is required that your child plays rec soccer with CYSA, which this would mean that they have 1 Academy practice per week with the professional coach and then 1 rec practice with their recreational team. We also offer an optional Friday skills program that's an add-on, and it's 8 weeks long that's in season, so it'd be during the fall season and spring season. At U9 and U10, rec soccer becomes optional and it's no longer required. So at that point, we do have 2 Academy practices per week. The day and time is picked by the coach and set by that team. And then we also, in order to supplement team training, we offer private skill sessions, small group skill sessions out at our practice fields for a small fee. So just to clarify, per North Texas Soccer, for Academy, you can play both rec and Academy up through age U10, but at U11, players must choose between rec and select soccer. So for this coming fall, that would be our 2010 birth year players. They're no longer permitted to play Academy soccer. Their options now would be select soccer and rec soccer. So let's look at the developmental progression that Coppell FC promotes. So we now have a systematic progression and a phasing of player development with a heavy emphasis of technical instruction at these academy ages. Okay, so 4v4 would be where all U7 players start and U8. And as you can see, more than half of the focus is on technique. So technique of dribbling, technique of passing, shooting, working on individualistic skills to build up their abilities so that they can play within a team framework later on. So you see the tactical decisions as a small component. That would be their decision making in 1v1, 2v1 situations. With only 4 players on the field, really there's not much of formation. So you're looking at more, what are their decision making abilities? And then you have some physical mobility as they're starting to grow into their bodies and learn how to run and have coordination and balance. At 7v7, we move to a higher emphasis on tactical decisions. So now you do have a formation, you're working as a team, we're working on building the ball out of the back. You add in a component of physicality, speed, and agility. And now we have some intangibles as a team player, right? We're building up their drive, their discipline, their self-study, all of these things that are going to make them a better soccer player. So as they grow and mature, we focus more on the physical and mental aspects as they're ready for it developmentally. And now as a club, we have developmental objectives and goals that we've defined for each of these formations. What are the club goals? We want to develop each player holistically in a safe environment. We want to meet the player at their level, provide coaching that meets each player with their needs. Not everybody learns in the same way. We want to make sure we're fostering a lifelong passion for the game. We don't want to burn our players out. We want them to love soccer for their whole life. In addition, it's important to us that we're promoting life skills, things that go beyond the field, things they're going to use for the rest of their life to be good people. And we also want to prepare them for the potential to play at higher levels. So some kids might have it as their goal. They want to play high school soccer or possibly even collegiate soccer. So we're preparing them with those fundamentals. As a club, we're striving to provide and retain outstanding coaches, consistency among our teams, and most importantly, we're building a soccer community. We are not just a club with members, we are a family, and all of our teams are individual families, and collectively we are a community. So our club is very player-centered. And what does that mean? That means we have a heavy focus on player development with building confidence. Okay, so we want to build these players up so that they are willing to try new things, they're willing to push themselves. We do not want to bring them down. We do not want to demean. We want the child to grow and develop as quickly as possible. And so we have an academy curriculum that has developmental milestones. We have set goals now for U7 and U8, the different characteristics that we want them to be able to achieve by the time they finish U8 and move on to 7v7. And same for 7v7. Our academy might be different from some others in that we do assure game time for all players. We instruct our coaches to try to get every player to almost play 50% of the game because there's no point in doing all the training and not get to play in the games, which all of the players, it's the funnest part for them. And that's where they're trying out the new things that they've learned in training. They're building that confidence in the games as well. Our club is really big on roster continuity. We're not chopping and shaving and mixing just to make a roster that makes sense for us. We want to maintain a core of kids that get to play together and develop together because we believe that there's also a value in that. And our club is perhaps a bit different than some of the other clubs, is that we actually are striving to make sure that we provide family balance, life balance. Soccer is important and we all love the game. That's why we're a part of this program. However, we feel it's extremely important that your family life have other elements other than just being at the soccer field every single weekend, 10, 12 tournaments a year. It's important to our staff and our coaches that we earn the trust with parents as well as players by being honest, transparent, and having open communication. So if you're not familiar with our club, in this fall, we should have 15 select teams. So that would be birth years 2002 to 2010. We also anticipate having 15 academy teams between that U7 to U10. So that would be 2011 to 2014 ages, birth years. This past spring, we had 350 players in the club and 11 coaches. And I am the director of competitive. I run the club alongside of Nadeem, who's the director of coaching, as well as our director of academy, Tom Bailey. And the club is overseen by our nonprofit board, Coppell Youth Soccer Association. So what sets us apart? Our club is focused on long-term development, not short-term games. So while some clubs might solely be focused on winning, we recognize that winning is going to come in the long term as long as we're doing the right things. So we believe that it's more important to make sure players are getting the playing time than to possibly get the win on that Sunday. And you're going to see that our coaches adhere to that philosophy. We have outstanding coaches. Ask any of our current players. Our staff is off the charts, and players love our coaches, and we've done a very good job of retaining them. We also have access to fully lit and consistent fields, which is great because that means we're not hopping around looking for fields. In particular, when it starts getting dark earlier, we're going to be practicing at the same fields for the entire 6 months, except for when the fields are closed due to rain. And then we also have access to some middle school turf and other options for practicing. And we do all of that while maintaining that at an affordable price for our families, because everyone should be able to afford competitive soccer. And we believe that competitive soccer should not be to line the pockets of staff members and clubs. We're doing this because we want our families to be able to play. So we are run by a nonprofit, and we don't make any money. Basically, all the income that comes in goes right back out the door to pay leagues, refs, coaches, all of those things. And as I mentioned before, unlike a lot of clubs that are very franchise-like, we are an actual community of families, and our coaches are a community of staff, and we share and we build and we help each other, and that's very unique in this DFW Metroplex. So just to introduce you to our staff, as I said, my name is Megan. I'm the director of competitive. I've been doing this for 5 years, and I basically oversee the day-to-day running of the club, and also planning for long-term vision and overseeing all of the operations. Nadeem is our director of coaching, and he is in charge of mentoring and training our staff and adding new staff as needed. Tom Bailey is our director of academy, and he runs our academy program, and he also helps with our Friday skills program, our pickup games in the summer, as well as he's currently helping us to reformulate our academy curriculum. Angela Lancaster, who many of you know, is our CYSA board president. And so she is the main liaison between these 3 staff members and the CYSA board. So we currently have 5 academy coaches, and we will be adding 1 more for the 2014 age groups. Coach Sarah, David, John, Rich, and Chris Stricker. So I'm going to turn it over to Nadeem, who's going to fill you in on a little bit more about each of our coaches, provide a little bit more of their background so that you can get to know them better.
Hello, how is everybody? Thank you guys. Thanks again for attending our session. Really appreciate it. We honestly have a great team of certified coaches. To follow up on Megan, I mean, we do a very good job in checking our coaches, making sure that we get the best to be able to follow the curriculum, to be able to provide your kids the best soccer opportunity out there and the best coaching that you can provide. Our first coach over here is Coach Sarah Oland. She's, as you can see, certified. She has her E-license. Sarah's been in the game for many years. She graduated out of Georgia Southern University, where she played Division I soccer. She coached with FC Dallas before. She's involved in the game, and she has 2 of the girls, the 2013 teams, and 2 2012 boys teams. So next. Next, we have David Shirazi. And David is a wonderful coach. He has his D license, very well trained. Him himself is an excellent player. I watch him play. He's coached for many years in the Metroplex with different clubs. And then we managed to steal him last year and have him with us on board. Next. John Davis. John is one of our English coaches. And as you can see, he has his certification from the UK, and he also has his D license from the USSF, the US certifications. John himself been playing for many years. He played for Liverpool Academy, Sheffield Halm, and Wigan Athletics. Those are excellent academies themselves in the UK. And he's been coaching and involved with our teams forever. And he has 3 of our club teams over here, 2 the 2012 teams and 1 07 boys team. Next. Another one of our English coaches, Coach Rich Evans. He has his UK certificate and he has his USSF C license. Rich is a fantastic coach. He's been working with the club since day one. He's done many camps. He's worked with the Challenger Sports before, and then he joined us full-time a few years ago, and he's been fantastic with us. He has 2 of our 2011 girls and the 2007 girls teams. Next, Chris Stricker. I'm not sure how many of you guys know Chris. Chris is based out of Coppell. He coached in Coppell High School. He coached the girls teams and won 2 state championships. He's been named 3 times Dallas Morning News Coach of the Year, 9 times District Coach of the Year, 2 times NCAA. His one team, solar team that graduated last year, finished 2nd in the nations 2 years ago, and 95% of the boys from that team went on to play college Division I and Division II. So we were lucky to be able to get him on board to add to our level of education and the coaching staff that will help us to keep on growing the club and to strengthen our the knowledge for our boys. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Nadeem. So we'll just quickly go through kind of what the typical calendar looks like for a year of academy. We really start in July after we've formed our rosters from open practices that are about to happen. So the teams would start practicing in mid to late July for the fall season. As many of you might know, there's a tournament called the Coppell Cup that takes place the 3rd weekend of August. A lot of our academy and select teams will participate in that tournament. Then fall league play starts and goes all the way through November. And at that point, at the end of the season, we do player evaluations, and then some of our teams might look to do a possible tournament. In the winter, we do pare down our practices to 1 practice a week. This is to give kids a break as well as allow them to participate in other sports like basketball if they want to. Our indoor league is optional, but this past winter, actually every single one of our academy teams did play in the indoor league and had a blast. And we had several teams make it to the championship. So spring practices then start back up in late January, and league play actually starts in early February, even though it's still pretty cold out. And that goes all the way through kind of typically the end of April, depending on rainouts, at which point we'd look to do probably 1 end of season tournament. And then we do another player evaluation at the end of spring. And at that point, we do open practices to add to our current rosters. So you're probably wondering what is included with the club fees that you would pay. We have professional coaches, obviously. We obviously need to pay the league and the ref fees. There's field usage fees that City of Coppell makes us pay. And that gives us also access to the middle school turf fields, as I mentioned, in case the fields are closed. We have to pay our pass-through fees to Home Association North Texas. We have a Team Snap app that we use both to register our players as well as provide communication and scheduling on an individual team basis. We do offer weekly goalkeeper training sessions with Coach Ben Sansom, and that is included in your fees, and that's for our U9 and U10 players. We also have the ability to rent some indoor facilities as determined by the coach when we can't get outdoor turf or when the weather is too difficult to be training outside. So for the fall 2020, we are going to, for the first time ever, offer a payment plan option for all parents. It will not need to be requested. It'll just be an option when you register, and that will be 4 total installments that you would pay between July and October. So in addition to what's included with the club fees, we have supplemental training, and these would be additional. So Friday Skills, as I mentioned, is an 8-week program for U7-U8. We also have private skills for U9 and 10. And then for the first time ever this summer, we're going to actually offer a club camp, a competitive soccer camp that's targeted at academy and select players. And that's tentatively scheduled for the end of July based on all of the COVID precautions. So here's a look at our fees by age. So U7 and U8, which practice 1 time per week, that would be $330 for the fall season. And then if you opt to add on the Friday night skills for 8 weeks, that would be $90 extra. For U9 and 10, that would be $430 a week. That's because they practice twice a week with their professional coach. And then as I mentioned, we have private skills as a supplement, and that's just $15 per hour session that they participate in. The winter options are not mandatory, as I mentioned. So we do have an optional indoor league that we try to encourage players to play in, and then also the winter training. So the club uniform is a great deal. We've got Under Armour as our club uniform supplier, and included in this kind of base package is 2 practice jerseys, 2 game jerseys, 2 pairs of the Under Armour shorts, socks, and a backpack, all for $185. For this fall, we're making the backpack mandatory, and part of that is actually related to everything going on with COVID. We want to make sure players can keep all of their items, their personal belongings together and inside a bag when they're at practice, to keep their things separate, and also to be able to allow them to bring extra jerseys to practice as needed by the coach and also to the games. Obviously, this is an interesting time that we're wading through right now. I'm sure many of you are wondering what the club is doing and what we plan to do. So right now, every family that wants to participate in our in-person practices has to complete a parent acknowledgement form of our protocols and safeguards, which I'll show you in a second. We are ramping back up in-person practices with just groups of 4 with social distancing. Because the governor basically said in his order that team practices cannot begin until May 31st. So even when we do begin back in these full team practices, we will, wherever possible, still attempt to maintain spacing, in particular during water breaks and not coming together in those tight huddles. We're going to be very cautious, I think, in particular relative to what it sounds like other clubs are doing. So it is very important to us that our kids stay healthy. So we're also requiring our parents to do self-reporting of any illness to their coaches, with certain things being, high alerts, obviously trouble breathing, coughing, fever, things like that. And then we have precautions that make them sit out for 14 days if they are sick. Otherwise, they need to show that they test negative for COVID-19. So we're having open communication between parents and coaches, and then coaches and CFC staff to make sure that we're taking every precaution. The other thing we've said is that practices are not mandatory. Any practice that players don't want to participate in right now, it's not going to be to their detriment. We are not going to penalize any family or kid who elects not to participate right now based on everything going on. So this is just a quick look at kind of some of the provisions that are in our parent acknowledgement. Like I said, if you're not currently part of the club, you haven't seen this yet, but when you go to register for open practices, we will ask you to agree to all of these protocols that we need our parents to follow. So what are we considering for next season? Obviously, no one has been able to say with much certainty what they think the fall is going to look like. But from what the governor has put out and kind of how things are proceeding, we are obviously ramping back up for summer and going to get out there and start practicing, as well as hold open practices. So our tentative plan is that academy registration will begin in late June, early July. And the club will then wait to register its teams for any league play until the latest possible minute. So that will probably be early August. And our hope there is that we can have a better feel for whether the fall season might get to be played in full or might get to be played in part, and how things are looking. If we don't pay for the league in the fall, we intend to give partial refunds for that percentage of your fees that would have gone to the league and the refs, because we wouldn't have paid for that. We'll provide as much of a refund as possible if the league games are reduced, provided that the leagues do work with us. However, I do want to make it clear that we will continue to pay our coaches, as we have all through this spring, to continue developing our players through virtual training, should we need to go in through another kind of quarantine period. So regarding open practices, all players must attend at least one session if they want to be considered for a roster. So if you have some sort of extenuating circumstances, we can work with you and possibly look at some alternate time or have you come out to another coach's practice. But in general, we need every child to come to at least one session. And it is mandatory that you pre-register. And the reason it's mandatory this year is that we do need everyone to complete that parent acknowledgement before their child steps foot on the field. And that's for your protection and our protection as well, and the protection of our coaches. And as I said, the club will be complying with all government orders regarding practices, and we're going to ask our parents to do the same. So if anyone has attended one of our open practices in the past, we used to do them by age and gender. So all of our U9 and 10 players would come to one big session, and then we would break them up into groups. That is going to change for this year because we want to limit group sizes. So what we've done is our open practices are going to be hosted by team and coach. So the schedule, I'll show you in a second. There's different days and times for every age and gender. And that's because we're going to be on separate fields, spaced out. Each team is going to have at least 2 sessions for you to attend, one of the 2 minimum. And then there will be current players at the open practices as well. This is on our website as well at coppellfc.com/academy. But just so you can take a quick look, as I mentioned, everything is on different days based on the coach, with the exception of 2014 girls and boys will be one session on Friday and Sunday. So that's Friday, June 12th and Sunday, June 14th. So to summarize, and hopefully have time for just a couple questions, we are a player-centered club. We're focused solely on development and holistic development at that, including the intangibles of these life skills that these kids need to be developing. We have amazing coaches. Go ask any of our current players, and I promise you, you will hear good things about our coaches. And what's great is, since we're tied to the CYSA, we have consistent fields with lights that are right here in Coppell. We offer something that most other clubs don't, and that's a community and a family, a soccer family, and also a club that's going to bring balance to your life and not overrun your schedule. And we do all of that while basically asking for just pass-through fees. Everything that we bring in goes right back out to pay someone. That, I'd like to thank you for joining us on this Friday evening. We really appreciate your interest in our club. We're hoping that you will register for the open practices if you haven't already. We'd love to see you out there in small groups, social distancing. And with that, I think we have just a few minutes for questions. I'm gonna look to see if anyone typed anything in the Q&A. If you do think of a question, we'll stay on for just a couple minutes. You can type your question by clicking on the Q&A button. You see that someone put something in the chat. So let's see, game time is 50%. Does that rule apply for Select 2? Academy games are played on Sundays. If so, why? Okay, so our Academy games are played on Sundays, and that is specifically so that players do not have to pick between rec and academy. We want them to be able to play both, in particular because at U7 and U8 we require that they play both. And so by putting our league play on Sundays, that opens up Saturdays for rec soccer. Game time is 50%. 50% is our general rule for academy. And the thought there is that we're really, really focusing on that technical and tactical development on an individualistic basis. That does not apply to our select ages. However, we do still encourage that our select coaches make sure players get playing time. So we're not taking players on the roster to have them sit the bench. We want everyone to at least get some exposure in games to be able to implement things that they're learning in the training. Okay, good. So I see a question. Are current academy players required to attend an open practice? Okay. So in the past, what we've done is when we ran the sessions differently, we would invite certain players to come out and then other players didn't need to come because the coach has had all season to assess those players. Since we're now going to a team-based open practice, the coaches are going to encourage all of the current players to come out, those that feel comfortable coming out and practicing with everything going on. But if you have concerns about coming out, it's not mandatory and we're not going to hold it against your child. But obviously we'd love to have our current players out there to be able to assess them alongside any prospective players that do come out.
And to make sure communicate with the coaches.
Yes, that's the most important. Great. Well, I don't see any other questions coming through. If you're a current academy player and you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your coach, to myself, or to Nadim. Any prospective players that are considering the club, we have loads of information on our website that I think you'll find useful, not just the open practice information, but more about the club, and in particular what teams we currently have and who our current coaches are. And you can also reach out to those coaches directly. All of their email addresses are on the website. So thank you so much for joining us on this Friday evening. We hope you enjoy the long weekend, and we look to see you out on the field soon, hopefully. Thank you so much for attending.